Welcome to SATV News. This is Anna Hussain with our headlines. Ousted former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina refuses to apologize for protesters' deaths, reports The Independent. National Consensus Commission deceived the public, says Fakhrul. BNP disappointed with Consensus Commission and government, says Salahuddin. Even if polls are delayed, July Charter referendum must come first, says Jamaat-e-Islami Naib Amir. Now, in details. Former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has refused to apologize for the deadly crackdown on street protests that ultimately led to her downfall last year. As part of a rare and wide-reaching interview with The Independent, prosecutors in Bangladesh are seeking the death penalty for Hasina, accusing her of crimes against humanity by ordering the use of lethal force against student protests, resulting in up to 1,400 deaths. Hasina, who ruled with an iron fist for over 15 years, is now living in exile in India. Asked if she would apologize to the families of protesters killed last year, she said she mourns each and every child, siblings, cousins and friends we lost as a nation and would continue to offer my condolence. But she rejects the allegation that she ordered to police to shoot demonstrators. BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir has accused the National Consensus Commission of deceiving the public and publishing its report without recording the party's note of dissent. Speaking as chief guest at a book launch at the National Press Club's Zahur Hossain Chaudhry Hall in Dhaka on Wednesday, he said the commission showed that the body cannot claim consensus and amounted to a betrayal of political parties as well as the people. Addressing Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus, Mirza Fakhrul said the interim leadership is bound by promises to the public and must carry out necessary reforms to deliver elections that produce a parliament capable of resolving the country's crisis. Any deviation from the mandate, he warned, would rest on the chief advisor's shoulder. He rejected past portrayals of BNP as anti-reform, arguing party emerged through reformist politics after the most independence, one-party system and later drove polarism. The chief advisor must complete the reforms that genuinely needed and hold an election that is acceptable to all, Fakhrul declared. If that promise is broken, he will be held accountable, he added. BNP is disheartened by the recent action of the National Consensus Commission and the interim government, senior party leader Salahuddin Ahmed said on Wednesday. Speaking at a seminar at Dhaka's Lakeshore Hotel, the BNP Standing Committee member urged that the Commission's latest proposal depart from the party's understanding of what would be implemented through consensus. Referring to the document signed on October 17, he said key elements were not fully reflected in the Commission's recommendations on how to implement the July Charter. Salahuddin Ahmed added that the Commission's push for a referendum on 48 constitutional items had not been discussed with the BNP. He questioned why months of dialogue were necessary if only the Commission's one or two parties' proposals were ultimately retained. Salahuddin Ahmed warned that the Commission's approach risked deepening divisions rather than forging unity. Jamaat-e-Islami Naib Amir Syed Abdullah Muhammad Tahir has demanded that a referendum on the July Charter be held first so that its implementation is not delayed, even if the general election is postponed for any reason. Speaking at a briefing today at Jamaat's central office in Mogbazar, Dhaka, following a meeting between party leader and visiting a Commonwealth, the delegation Tahir, however, expressed hope that the upcoming national election will be held on time. Even if the national election is delayed for any reason, we hope it will happen on time, inshallah. But the July Charter must be passed. It is also a reform. He also urged the government to announce the date of the referendum without delay. Tahir noted that the National Consensus Commission has recommended holding the referendum on a before-election day. He explained that the referendum concerns the reform process, while the national election determines state authority. Their nature is different, so the referendum should precede the election, he added. Environment, Forest and Climate Change Advisor Syeda Rizwana Hassan said today, change can't always be controlled, but the fight to survive depends on people and in families. Women plays the strongest role in inspiring that fight. Although change is not in our control, the fight for survival is in our hands. And women provide the most inspiration for this survival in the family. A climate-resilient Bangladesh will be built with the indomitable courage of women. She said Rizwana, also the advisor of Ministry of Water Resources, made the remarks while addressing as the chief guest at the annual Committee of Practices Network Convention 2025. Empower Women for Climate Resilient Societies held at Aloki here. According to a press release issued by the ministry, she observed that women in Bangladesh are leading the fight for climate resilience at home in their communities and across disaster-prone regions. Highlighting the need to rethink development priorities, Syeda Rizwana Hassan said, we must balance our investment in mega infrastructure projects with increased allocations to protect people living in river erosions and disaster-prone areas. She noted that the true sustainable development can only be achieved when every vulnerable and marginalized person is shielded from the impacts of climate change. The High Court on Wednesday issued a rule asking the authorities concerned why the family of Abul Kalam, who died after a metro rail bearing pad fall, should not be given compensation of Taka 2 crore. The High Court also ordered the formation of expert committee to examine overall metro rail safety and accident-related issues and submit a report within 30 days. The High Court bench of Justice Fahmida Qadir and Justice Asif Hassan issued the rule during the initial hearing of writ filed in public interest. Supreme Court lawyer Barrister Abdullah Al-Mamun filed the writ on Monday, naming the Road Transport and Bridges Secretary, Dhaka Mass Transit Committee, Company Limited, Dhaka Transport Coordination Authority and Italian Thai Development Corporation Limited as respondents. During the hearing, Additional Attorney General Arshadur Rauf told the court that the government has already formed an investigation committee and that a safety audit of the metro rail is underway. Viewers, we are taking a short break. Stay with us.
Equipment for man and woman. A restaurant of delicious local and international cuisine. Fully air-conditioned building with spacious banquet, car lift, sky view rooftop restaurant, all in one. Grand Club Limited, Mirpur 10, Dhaka.
কি এমন জিনিস যেটা সব লোকে খায়, ছোটরা খেলে পরে কেঁদে মায়ের কাছে যায়, বৃদ্ধ লোক খেলে পরে মাথায় দেয় হাত, যুবক যুবতীরা খেলে পরে এদিক ওদিক তাকায়।
ছেড়ে দে শয়তান, ছেড়ে দে, দেহ পেলে আমার মন পাবি না, ছেড়ে দে।
কোন ফলের বীজ নেই বলো দেখি দাদা, বলতে না পারলে হবে তুমি গাধা।
মন্দিরা চক্রবর্তী কার সাথে প্রেম করছে?
আমি এখন মা হতে চলেছে।
চিনেছি তোমারে আকারে প্রকারে, দিনের আলো রাতের আধারে।
কোন বাসায় শুধু দুজন থাকে, দরজা জানালা ছাদ কিছুই থাকে না?
পা, পায়ের নুপুর, ছন্দ,
মনে হচ্ছে কি ছু দিয়ে জাদু মন্ত্র।
এক্স্যাক্টলি, পায়েরে নুপুর আমার।
অরিক্স স্পেশাল সেলিব্রিটি শো তারকার ঝলক দেখবেন প্রতি শুক্রবার রাত 9:30 মিনিটে।
ভালোবাসা একবার তুমি বউ কইয়া ডাকো।
হ্যাঁ গো,
আর কত দূর?
আরে আমি তো ফিডের গাড়ির লগে।
তোমার গরু হাঁস মুরগি মাছ তো অনশন শুরু কইরা দিছে।
কি কও, অনশন শুরু কইরা দিছে? কেডা? হাঁস মুরগি মাছ।
আরে ওগো মতি গতি দেখা মনে হইতাছে এসএফি ছাড়া কিছুই খাইবো না।
হ্যাঁ গো, এসএফিটার খবর ওরা জানলো কেমনে?
আরে ভালো জিনিসের খবর ছড়াতে কি আর মাইক লাগে? খবর ভাসে বাতাসে বাতাসে।
আরে দেখো, এসএফিটার জাদু।
সম্পূর্ণ নিজস্ব তত্ত্বাবধানে বিশেষজ্ঞদের সমন্বয়ে প্রস্তুত হয় এসএফিডের পশুখাদ্য। অত্যাধুনিক প্রযুক্তিতে তৈরি এই পশুখাদ্য যেমন নিরাপদ তেমনি স্বাস্থ্যকর। এসএফিড।
Welcome back. You're watching SATV News. News from abroad. The Israeli army killed more than 100 Palestinians, including 35 children, in the Gaza Strip since Tuesday evening, violating the ceasefire agreement, according to the medics. Gaza Civil Defense spokesperson Mahmoud Basal said that over 100 people, 35 of them children, were killed in horrific Israeli massacres in less than 12 hours across the Gaza Strip. These massacres are being carried out in full view of mediators and the international community, which remains silent and incapable of taking any concrete steps to stop the ongoing bloodshed of Palestinians that has continued for more than 2 years. The spokesperson said the state news agency Wafa, citing medical sources from Gaza hospitals, said that 31 people have been killed by the Israeli army in the north, 42 people in the central areas and 18 in the southern Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump said Israel hit back after a soldier was taken out, but claims nothing is going to jeopardize the ceasefire. He also says Hamas has to behave. South Korea welcomed US President Donald Trump on Wednesday with a replica Golden Crown and awarded him with the Grand Order of Mungwon, the country's highest decoration. Trump landed in South Korea on the final leg of a trip through Asia that also saw stops in Malaysia and Japan, with high-profile trade talks expected with South Korea President Lee Jae-myung and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Lee's office said that in recognition of Trump's role as a peacemaker on the Korean peninsula, he was awarded the Grand Order of Mungwon, which is named after South Korea's national flower. Lee is hoping to win concessions from Trump in drawn-out negotiations aimed at lowering US tariffs on South Korea, and has wowed the US president by praising his outrage to North Korea. Lee and Trump met at the museum in the cities of Jeonju, a quiet tourist town filled with historic tombs and palaces from its time as the capital of an ancient Shilla kingdom, which ruled about a third of the Korean peninsula until the 9th century. Meanwhile, anti-Trump protesters from the Korean Confederation of the Trade Unions gathered to protest on Wednesday to denounce the visit of the US President Donald Trump in South Korea, with the trade deal expected to be discussed with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. Over 80 protesters were seen chanting "No Trump" while holding up similar signs and lying on the roads in protest near the venue where Trump and Lee were attending the APEC CEO summit. Before police stepped into the break the protest during Trump's speech at the APEC CEO summit, he said a trade deal with South Korea will be finalized very soon. The two allies announced a deal in late July under which Seoul would avoid the worst of the tariffs by agreeing to pump $350 billion of new investments into United States. But talks over the structure of those investments have been deadlocked. North Korea test-fired sea-to-surface missiles to the west of the Korean peninsula on Tuesday, state media KCNA reported on Wednesday. The test came ahead of US President Donald Trump's visit to South Korea on Wednesday. South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff on Wednesday said the military had detected missile activities in North Korea and was prepared for Tuesday's launch. JCS said the military detected cruise missiles at around 3 p.m. local time on Tuesday in sea west of North Korea. It said the military is analyzing details of the test. Beijing on Wednesday confirmed that Chinese President Xi Jinping is on course to meet U.S. counterpart Donald Trump in South Korea's Busan on October 30. During this meeting, the two presidents will engage in deep communications on strategic and long-term issues concerning China-U.S. relations, as well as major topics of mutual concern, Guo Jikun, the Foreign Ministry spokesperson, said in a regular news briefing.
元首外交对中美关系发挥着不可替代的。
Venezuela's National Assembly on Tuesday declared Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Kamala Parcet Biceser persona non grata following Caracas' suspension of a wide-ranging energy pact with its neighbor after President Nicolas Maduro criticized what he called its proud stance amid ongoing military escalation in the region. On Monday, Maduro suspended energy-level augment cooperation with Trinidad and Tobago, including joint natural gas projects underway. In a televised address, he said the oil ministry and the board of state oil company PDVSA had sent him a proposal to send the suspend cooperation agreements. He added that the order immediately halts all aspects of the energy agreement with Trinidad and Tobago, and that the National Assembly and the Supreme Court would be asked to weigh in with additional recommendations. The move would likely include revoking the license to develop the massive Dragon natural gas field. Among other projects, Maduro criticized what he described as the proud U.S. stance of Prime Minister Perez Biceser, who took office on May 1st. At least 64 people died on Tuesday in Rio de Janeiro's most deadly police operation ever, which is targeted a major gang days before the city hosts global events related to the United Nations Climate Summit. Known as COP30, police have often conducted large-scale operations against criminal groups ahead of major events in Rio, which hosted the 2016 Olympics, the 2024 G20 Summit and the BRICS Summit in July. Next week, Rio hosts the C40 Global Summit of Mayors Tackling Climate Change and Prince William Earthshot Prize, which will feature several global celebrities. The programming is part of the run-up to COP30, the United Nations Climate Summit held in the Amazon city of Belém from November 10 to November 21. The death toll confirmed by Rio Governor Claudio Castro on Tuesday, which included 4 police officers, was more than twice Rio's most deadly previous police operations. Hurricane Melissa slammed into Cuba early on Wednesday, hours after causing devastation in neighboring Jamaica as the strongest ever storm on record to hit the Caribbean island nations. Melissa hit the southern coast of eastern Cuba with maximum sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, the U.S. National Hurricane Center said. Around 735,000 people were evacuated from their homes in southern eastern Cuba as the storm approached. Authorities said Hurricane Melissa's trail of destruction in Jamaica left torn of roofs and other damages in Montego Bay on Tuesday. Melissa struck lands near Jamaica's southern town of New Hope, packing maximum sustained winds of 185 miles per hour, the U.S. National Hurricane Center said in an advisory well above the minimum strength of a Category 5 storm, the most powerful level of the Saphir. Meanwhile, floods triggered by record heavy rains have killed at least 9 people and left 5 others missing in central Vietnam. The government said on Wednesday 6 of the fatalities were in Da Nang, home to one of the country's most popular beaches, and the accident town of Hoi An. The government said in a statement the floods have inundated more than 103,000 houses, mostly in the country's top tourist sites of Phi and Hoi An, the government's disaster agency said in a separate report. Heavy rains will continue in central Vietnam over the next 2 days, with rainfall in some areas staying above 400 millimeters from early Wednesday until late Thursday, according to the government's weather forecast agency. Polling stations opened across the Netherlands on Wednesday morning as the country votes to elect members of the House of Representatives, with polls showing a tight race among the leading parties. Around 13.5 million eligible voters are expected to cast their ballots in the general election, with polling stations open from 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. local media reported. In several cities, including Zwolle, Arnhem and Castricum, some polling stations opened at midnight, allowing early voters to cast their ballots in unique venues such as student cafe, a museum and community center. Tanzanians went to polls on Wednesday in an election that President Samia Suluhu Hassan is expected to win after candidates from the two leading opposition parties were barred from standing. In addition, the presidential election voters are choosing members of the country's 400-seat parliament and a president and lawmakers in the semi-autonomous Zanzibar archipelago. The vote is being held without the leading opposition party, Chadema, whose leader Tundu Lissu is on trial for treason, accusation which he has denied. The Electoral Commission disqualified Chadema in April after it refused to sign an electoral code of conduct. Romania and NATO allies were notified of US plans to cut off the number of troops stationed on Europe's eastern flank, including soldiers who were to be stationed at Romania's Mihail Concegur air base. Romania's defense minister said on Wednesday, Washington's European allies have been told previously by the administration of President Donald Trump that they will need to take more responsibilities for their own security as the United States focuses more on its own borders and the Indo-Pacific region. It said the decision was expected given changes in Washington's priorities, but that roughly 1,000 US troops will continue to be stationed in Romania. There was no immediate comment from NATO, despite worries on NATO's eastern flank about the potential scaling back of the United States' presence in the region at a time when Russia continues to wage war in Ukraine. Trump said in September that Washington could increase its troop presence in Poland.
Vor rămâne în continuare aproximativ 1000 de soldați americani în România, contribuind la descurajare. Că vorbim de aliați. Mâine merg la Sibiu și Cincu împreună cu... Am fost informați la nivel oficial ca minister de externe, ambasador.
You're up to date with our top stories so far here on SATV. And to know the latest news, visit www.satv.tv. Stay with us.